Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August edition of Civil Cafe. I am Gene Park, Community Manager for civilbeat.com, Hawaii investigative news service. We are a monthly subscription service, and every month we put together these live events to talk about issues that affect our community. This month we're going to be talking about homelessness. As far as I can recall, we have about 4,700 homeless on Oahu alone. I recently posted on civilbeat.com that Hawaii has the highest per capita rate of homelessness in the United States, second only to Washington, D.C. So it's just us in D.C. Right up there, worse than California. This is something that's been on the tip of everyone's tongue. It's just been getting worse and worse, and I think there's been a lot of conversation about it, and that's why Civil Beat is very happy to host this. A couple housekeeping notes: please keep your cell phones off or on silent. The hashtag tonight is hashtag Civil Cafe on Twitter and Instagram. If you have any questions for the panel, please, you can either tweet us at it, and I'll read it, and I'll read it out by 7 o'clock. We're going to have a Q&A at the first hour with reporter Chad Blair, and at 7 o'clock, we'll take it to you guys. So please form a line right here once you start having questions. I just want to introduce our panel real quick. We have Colin Kippen. He's the state coordinator for homelessness for the state of Hawaii. We have Jun Yang, the housing director for the city and county of Honolulu. We have Jason Esper, who's the director of Caravan at the Waikiki Health Center. We originally had Joy Rucker to be here. She couldn't make it, so we have Mr. Jason Esper instead. And last but not least, we have Mr. Jerry Coffey with the Institute of Human Services, clinical director of Institute of Human Services. And we want to remind you that tonight is a special fundraiser for HAWA. HAWA is a nonprofit that provides aid for at-risk or homeless youth. We're asking for a minimum suggested donation of $5, or give whatever you can. They will be eternally grateful. And I'd like to invite Deborah up here to say a couple words about HAWA. Please give her a hand.
Hello, my name is Deborah Smith. I am the outreach coordinator for the Youth Outreach Project, which is a part of HAWA that is also run in conjunction with Waikiki Health. HAWA has numerous programs throughout the state that deal with homeless, at-risk, families in trouble. We have foster programs. They have programs in the school. We have an emergency shelter, transitional living, independent living program. I work for Youth Outreach, which is based in Waikiki, and we provide service to homeless, runaway, and street-identified youth. We have a drop-in center 4 days a week where they can come, have a meal, take a shower, do laundry, get clothing, play on the computers. We have GED classes. We have lockers so they have a place to store their stuff. And we also do outreach in Waikiki, mostly Waikiki, 5 nights a week, but we do go to other parts of the island, especially if someone calls us and they have a youth that they feel that need, we will go. We also do try to go to Kaka'ako once a month, and that's pretty much what we do.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Please give her a hand again. So her table is over there. You can see the kit that they give out to the youth. You can see where your money goes to firsthand. I'd like to recognize Representative Gene Ward in the audience. Hello, sir. So without further ado, let's take it away, Chad.
Thank you, Gene. Big round of applause for Gene Park. He's the man. Thank you, everybody. I want to start with a little personal observation. When I first moved to Hawaii to go to graduate school in the 1990s, I remember 3, what we probably would have called homeless people back in the 1990s. Maybe we didn't have that word yet. But 3 people that I could think of in Honolulu that I would see around town, one of them with a shopping cart. And it seemed like that's the way it was for many, many years. And after I got out of graduate school and went to work for Honolulu Weekly after the turn of the century, I started to notice a few more. And then, by the time I got to Hawaii Public Radio in 2004, the homeless situation picked up. In particular, In 2006, I was there in Ala Moana Park, the night that Mufi Hanneman, the mayor at the time, had homeless people evicted from the park, and we all marched together to Honolulu Hale, and that's when they set up that emergency shelter at, of all things, at the police station. And of course, it wasn't much long after that that Governor Linda Lingle set up the Next Step shelter in Kaka'ako, and I was there the day that was open. Nobody thought that 8 years later that thing was going to be a permanent fixture, and that there would still be such a requirement to house people who are in dire need. And then the final thing I wanted to say is I was driving in from Kaimuki, where our offices are. I went down Waialae, went down Baratania, went down Ward. I probably saw 5 or 6 people homeless on the streets, a few shopping carts overflowing. 90 degrees outside, very, very hot, nowhere for them to go, I guess. And I guess this leads to my first question. What the heck happened over these last 2 decades to increase the homeless population? And if I could, I'd like to start with Colin from the state's perspective.
Aloha, all of you. Thank you for coming. I also want to thank Yo, and want you to please remember them, Hale Kippen and the programs that they run. So the question is, you know, we've got a lot more. We notice that there are more homeless people. The reality is that homeless people have been here for many years. The situation that you describe presently is one that has been growing, and it is now to the point where people are recognizing it. And you know, when you start to think about things like that, I see that as an opportunity to make change happen. And here's the change that needs to happen. I'm going to be brief and really succinct. What we need to do is focus on getting people into permanent housing. Now you say, we don't have enough housing. Well, that's true, but until you could start to get people ready to go into, until you could say that we are going to qualify people to move into housing and that all of our resources are going to come to bear to be able to move those people into housing, what we are doing is we're simply creating a system where we're using the fact that we could say they're not ready to be housed as a reason to say that we do not have a crisis of huge proportions. And so the work that we're doing is to really change that conversation. And it's one about creating permanent housing. We've created an initiative to do that. For the first time, we are using a standard assessment tool so that we can begin to triage and understand who are the people who are the neediest. And if you were talking about the 90s, I can tell you what the data that we're collecting is finding. For the first time, all of our service providers are using one tool, because previously, if you had asked different service providers to decide, to tell you who was the most needy, they all would have their own scales. They all would have their own assessment processes. But now we have one. And the reason that's important is this, because we want to be able to begin to be able to triage the people, to be able to understand what the needs of each different group is so that we could start to assess the services that are available for them.
Well, let me just push you on that a little bit, and feel free to jump in, our other panelists. Last time I checked, the average price of a home in Honolulu, on Oahu, was $700,000. Is that the figure right now? And the average rent between $1,000 and $1,500, which is just astounding to think about that people survive. How on earth are we going to have affordable housing? We're right here in Kaka'ako, and the only affordable housing I can think of is Halekavila, but you have all these other luxury places going up with very little allocation for affordable housing. So when we say affordable housing, what do we really mean? What is realistic?
I don't want to hog the show here.
Jun, let's go to Jun, because I know he's working for the city.
We're working on some things together here.
Good evening, everybody. Aloha, Jun Yang. The city at this point is in the process of redrafting, or actually creating for the first time, a comprehensive housing policy where we get to look at the entire island and its needs. And affordable housing is a big component of that. So when we talk about affordable housing, we're not talking about public housing. We're talking about housing that our average working families can afford. Somebody at 80% of area median income is a family of 4. They make near $80,000 a year. That's not a bad income. But right now, because of the way the real estate prices are, it's very, very difficult for that family to make it on this island. So what we're trying to do is to find ways within government and also to incentivize private developers to say, hey, we all want to be a part of this because there's plenty of demand. There's plenty of demand so that we could actually house those who need it. Right now, we have a big, long waiting list in public housing, huge waiting lists in the affordable rental housing developments, and there's really nothing between those rental affordable housing and the market. That difference is so great that we see these huge wait lists in our public housing of 10 years, 10,000 people on the wait list. We have hundreds and thousands of people on other private developer wait lists for those like Catholic Charities or EAH Housing, Vitus. These groups that actually build, they have large wait lists because we just don't have the supply out there.
And can everybody hear June okay? Is he hot enough on the mic, or should he scoot up just a little bit more? A little bit more. Feel free to get close to that microphone. Don't be shy. Let me go to Jerry, if I could. Speaking of waiting lists, you're at IHS, and that's not too far from downtown. Is it realistic that we can actually come up with an affordable housing system to house people that cannot afford the current market rates? Is that something you see the city and the state making progress on?
When you pose the question, what's up with the big increase?
I was hoping somebody would take that question up.
Well, I'm going to answer part of that. And naturally, part of the obvious answer that most of us in this room have has to do with housing and the cost of housing. That's part of the answer to your question. And it's ironic that we're sitting in Kaka'ako having this discussion, because Kaka'ako has pretty much been the crucible of this discussion on Oahu, as we're anticipating lots of housing units going in right here in this particular area, and all the consciousness raising that's been done around the fact that nobody can afford those affordable units. What I can tell you about the families who live at IHS, 80% of the families who live in our family dorm, so our family dorm can hold between 30 and 40 families, which is typically about 130 or 140 folks. 80% of those families are working families. So the most compelling reason for them to be in our shelter is that they simply cannot afford the cost of housing.
Jerry, how many kids are at IHS?
That number fluctuates. It depends on who's coming in the door and who's going out the back door. At the most, we have 40 school-age kids at IHS. We have an after-school program, so we'll accommodate sometimes up to 40 kids. At the moment, I think we have about 15, but the school year is just starting, and we know families tend to come in more as the school year ramps up.
Okay, so Jason Espero, to you, the questions are about affordable housing and what happened. The last time I saw you, you were running the Next Step shelter. Now you're at Caravan, Waikiki Health. But I was seeing teddy bears and toys and evidence that there were a lot of kids staying at Next Step. What did happen, do you think, over the last few years and last decade to make homelessness such a crisis as it is today?
Well, really the issue and challenge that we're having at our shelter and other shelters is the issue with affordable housing. A lot of our families and individuals living at Next Step, they're on housing wait lists for public housing, private affordable rentals. They have some income. Some are working families. Some have a fixed income of SSI, welfare, Social Security retirement, but they can't afford the market rentals that's out there in our communities. For example, for a studio, when I have my caseworkers, case managers, and housing specialists looking for a place for our families and singles, most of the prices out there are $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 for a studio or a one-bedroom. And many of our families and individuals at our shelter are earning less than what the actual market rentals are in our community. So if they can't afford, if they don't even make the minimum rent, then they're gonna end up staying in our shelters. And that's why there's a wait list to get into Next Step. That's why individuals and family end up staying in our shelter for 6 months, a year, sometimes 2 years, because they're waiting to get into public housing. They're waiting for their name to get called at those private affordable rental properties. And really the challenge is the actual price of the rentals.
Well, Housing First, which the attempt was to get into Chinatown a couple of years ago. In fact, I think it was under the Hanneman administration, and then that was shelved largely because of NIMBY, not in my backyard. And we do have to raise the idea that if we are going to have affordable housing, I mean, IHS is an industrial area, although there's a warehouse area, although there are apartment buildings nearby. Are we going to be facing neighborhoods not welcoming these folks next to them in these affordable housing units? How do you address that?
You know, so the question really, it's a tricky question.
I'm a tricky reporter.
You are a tricky reporter, but partly because of the way you set the question up. I mean, the reality is that homeless people are in all communities. They live in these communities. You know, I was born and raised on the windward side. You know, I grew up in Ka'ava, and then we moved into the big town of Kaneohe, right? So we go out every year and we do a count. It's called the point-in-time count. And we literally go out and we find homeless people and we count them. And I can tell you that when I was out counting the last time, and every year it's about the same time, beginning of January, here's what I found. I went out to the windward side because that's an area I'm really familiar with, and there were individuals that I was able to make a contact with who were from families that I knew. These were people from the community who were homeless in that community. And you know, there are a whole bunch of reasons why a human being can become homeless. I mean, there are just many, and I like to think of it this way. And if this sticks in your mind, I'm really happy. The idea is this: every one of us are walking over this abyss that's covered with lauhala that is weaved together. And what happens is a hole develops in that lauhala. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of your health. It could be the breakup of a significant relationship. It could be a mental health problem. It could be the loss of your sobriety. It could be a combination of all of these factors. But the reality is that when that lauhala rips, you fall into this abyss. And the reality is that the longer you're in that abyss, the more difficult it is for all of the people here to pull you out of that. So that is why the policy directive is this: we need to come up with programs that immediately take people out of that abyss and get them stably housed as quickly as we can. Now, you have heard conversation here tonight, and it's an absolute fact that we do not have a sufficient supply of housing. But where's the private sector in this conversation? Because they absolutely need to be involved. Where are the businesses? They absolutely need to be involved. Our churches, they're already involved. And they provide many of our kitchens, and they provide food for the homeless. But we're trying to expand that conversation so that they can be involved in housing. Exactly. Public housing is a big part of this. It's a big part of this conversation. The reality is, this will not get solved unless we can establish the political will to do something different. And the something different that we are now doing is we are really shifting how we operate to be able to, as quickly as possible, get the entire system to focus on putting people into permanent housing. That's the space that we're in. And you might say, well, you know, you can't do it. You can do it. The reality is that if you don't push it, it will never happen.
Where's that housing going to be? And how are you going to convince developers to make it profitable? We talked to Stanford Carr, who I believe was involved with the Halikavila project and others, and he said, look, there's just no money in this for developers. And I can understand churches getting involved, but a developer, let's face it, they're in it for the money. That's what they do. It's profit. How do you convince a developer to build affordable housing units, and where do you put them? And I guess I'm moving to you, John.
Yeah, so with the city's initiative, this is an initiative that through the mayor, so we have to realize that our mayor, Kirk Caldwell, this is the first time any administration in the city has taken on homelessness and said this is an important community issue, so we at the city must also be at the table and be a part of that solution. And in May of last year, we started we had the Homeless Action Plan released. And it was based on a budget that was based on the sale of the city 12 buildings. Those buildings were never sold. We're still in that process. It's somewhere there. But what we were able to do in this past budget cycle is to place in the budget $3 million of rental and case management wraparound service money from our general funds. This means that in this fiscal year, we will be housing through a scattered site model in the three main areas of our chronic homeless populations, and those are areas in Waikiki, downtown Chinatown, and the Leeward Coast. The reason why we chose those, if you go back to that study, shows the point in time count, which hasn't changed much in the concentrations of the population, that these are the three areas that have the highest individuals and families that are chronically homeless. Our unsheltered populations are in these areas. So we have focused our resources to say we want to house our homeless that are in this area near or within these areas.
Will there be an affordable housing unit in Waikiki? Do you think the tourist industry is going to go for that?
The community has already been supportive. So when we had talked about, in the former administration under Peter Carlisle, they had tried to get a housing first project started in the Waikiki area. They were trying to figure out a location, and the community was supportive of it. When we speak to them now, they want to see it happen. They don't want to hear any more conversation. They want to see it happen, and we're ready to do that now.
Okay. Jason, what do you think? You like that idea of an affordable housing complex in Waikiki? That's where Waikiki Health is.
Well, of course, affordable housing anywhere in the community is a good thing, whether it's in Waikiki, downtown, Ewa Beach, IL. We need more affordable housing units, plain and simple. And the reason why our shelters are full and people end up staying and living in our shelters is because they're on the very long wait list to get into these private and public affordable housing properties. So, if so happen a miracle happens and they create more affordable housing properties, I'm sure our caseworkers, our case managers will be applying our clients to these properties.
Maybe Kamehameha Schools and Bishop State will come forth with some of their land in Waikiki and some of the other trusts.
But I want to make one clarification. We're talking
Sure.
about scattered site model. That doesn't mean that we're going to have a large
I'm sorry,
complex.
talking about what? What's that called?
When we're scattered site, which means that we are able to rent units within the community.
I see.
So we're not talking about putting a huge development of just chronically homeless.
So weaving them in with existing structures and...
We have our homeless in every community. Finding a unit within each community would be the right way to do it, and it is a national best practice.
Okay, and maybe I'm being a little too harsh here, and Jerry, I'm going to go to you because you said 80% of the folks at IHS are working, and there's families that are there.
In the family dorm.
In the family dorm. As we all know, when you go to Kmart there's was it the Salvation Army or Goodwill?
Salvation Army.
Salvation Army. There's folks sitting or lying on the sidewalk, a lot of folks not looking real happy, and that's a turnoff for a lot of people. And what about that concern, that if you do start weaving these units in, that I hate to keep bringing up the NIMBY thing, but that's what I hear over and over from a lot of people. That's what the tourist industry is saying. You're scaring off tourists.
Part of the answer to the question, maybe this is not the time in the program when this would be the topic of discussion. And it's certainly a controversial idea, and I'm sure many people in here have different ideas, thoughts, and certainly feelings about it. But we're having conversations now about people who need homes. Okay. And I would like to point out that many of the folks that we see around who are homeless had a home. And they came here from someplace far away because this is a great place to make a home, as we all know. And we all know how expensive it is to live here. So part of the discussion about finding enough housing for folks includes having the dialogue and not being in denial about that we have a large percentage of homeless folks who actually had resources, chose to spend their resources to get here, and now have no more resources. I don't have a personal strong opinion about whether people should come here from the mainland or not, but I don't think that we're really having the full conversation if we're not also talking about the fact that at IHS, at some points in time, 40% of our men's shelter are folks who have recently arrived from the mainland within the last 6 months. That's a significant number of people. And many of those folks are vets, which is
artfully
important.
said. I can see why Connie Mitchell hired you to work at IHS. Well, let me then go to this next question, which is related. There have been some fairly radical proposals to deal with homelessness aside from affordable housing. One of them is to fly homeless people back to the mainland. John Mizuno and Rita Cabanilla have pushed for that, but the state, DHS, has been reluctant to do that. Another idea is to have safe zones. That's something that Tom Brower, the Waikiki rep, and others have pushed for, and some resistance in that regard as well. A place where a homeless person can go and get water and sleep and not feel that they're going to be in trouble physically. There's also been talk about allowing people to sleep in their cars in parking lots, perhaps government parking lots as well. Are these ideas that might actually help us, at least as we try and get more affordable housing units up? Do you think these are realistic? Colin.
You know, there was a proposal about creating, I think a couple of years ago, it was about converting property during the day, converting public buildings at night. And so a study was accomplished, and the issue was really one of just how would you manage something like that, right? How would you be able to manage a project like that? What we've seen with, you know, so here's the deal, right? We have shelters that have unused space now. And the reality is that not everyone wants to live in a shelter who's homeless. And the question will be, if you wanted to create something like a safe zone, the question will be, how is that going to be run? Is it going to be a very low barrier sort of place where anyone can go at any time? Or is it going to be something that is really a community-based thing? And what the data tells us is that something that is community-based, where you simply have sort of like a commune, where people, you know, have a similar set of values. People agree to a similar set of rules. People agree that they're going to live in a certain way. This last legislative session, I did some research, and we pulled together a whole bunch of Native Hawaiians to talk about the concept of a kauhale, a community center, you know, where people would come in. And a really key factor in that is sort of the state of mind of the individual who would want to be part of that, right? Are they willing to abide by a community sense of rules, or are they not? And I think that if you start to create these other things, my counsel is that you have to do it very, very carefully, because, and I know Jerry and Jason can tell you this, the dynamics of running a shelter are absolutely just mind-boggling in terms of all of the things you have to be thinking about on a daily basis.
Believe it or not, one of the favorite parts of my role at IHS is that I hear guest complaints. And I look forward to that because it's an opportunity to build perspective when folks are coming with a problem and a complaint. And a lot of homeless folks need a lot of help getting a little bit of perspective. What I tell folks when they grumble that IHS is sometimes a stressful place to live, I remind them that IHS is an institution. And I remind them that institutional living can be very stressful. And when you live in an institution, you forfeit a lot of freedom, you forfeit a lot of personal space. But whether they like it or not, whether I like it or not, whether a lot of folks who offer a lot of feedback to the media like it or not, it is an institution. And there are things that need to happen in an institution for an institution that serves at-risk populations to be run safely. I would not want to be a clinical director in a safe zone. I'm grateful that IHS is a great big building with a lot of cameras and a lot of control, and I'm not a control freak, but I would be very, very curious to see that social experiment play out. It is difficult enough to ensure the safety, consistency, and well-being of 350 people a night in an institution with plumbing and electricity and primary care clinics and after-school programs. Unless somebody had a whole lot of money, a whole lot of time, a whole lot of patience, and a really, really great model, I would be pretty skeptical about how safe a safe zone, how long would a safe zone be a safe place?
Safe zones, maybe. And those were some of the very same concerns that were expressed at the legislature, the enforcement, how do you keep things safe? I remember, Jason, when you were at Next Step, and I don't want to bring the shelter up because I know that you have a new job now at Caravan, but I remember a lot of folks simply didn't want to abide by those rules, and you had to enforce those rules, and you had to turn people away. But what do you think? Do you think safe zones or the idea of sleeping in cars? There's a lot of people that sleep in their cars. Maybe have a few parking lots at nighttime, turn that over, or is that going to be an enforcement problem as well?
Well, the issue with safe zones, as Jerry and Colin stated, is how will it be enforced? You have a lot of people who are homeless with a lot of issues, mental health, substance abuse, a lot going on in their lives. And when you mix those people together with no structure, with no boundaries, with no rules, you're just asking for a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. And that's why shelters like Next Step and IHS have rules to ensure the safety of individuals who are residing there. You need to have boundaries, and what I learned is our residents, they like the structure. The structure helps them with getting back into the mode of daily routine, a structured life, because when we house an individual, they will have to follow that routine, that structure, following the rules of the landlord or rules at work. So really it's a test or a trial run for them and practice in a way until they get housed or employed.
Jun, you want to jump in here? You have an interesting role in which you were on the advocacy side, and now you're working for the city, for Mayor Caldwell. Do you have any thoughts on these issues that we've been talking about, the safe zones, the sleep in your car? Maybe nobody's responded to the fly people home yet question, but that's all right.
Which one?
Flying people home. Jerry, you mentioned there's a lot of folks, right? 40% at IHS that have come recently from
At times we have that
Okay.
percent, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I'll answer the fly people home
Thank you.
thing. I'll just do that.
Yeah, I just brought it up. I'm going to let Colin speak to it.
No. So the deal with the fly people home thing was that, that was queued up. I don't work for the Department of Human Services, but it was queued up, and the legislature made it discretionary on the part of the Department of Human Services, and the conversation about so when the state or the city or any governmental entity undertakes anything like that, there are a whole bunch of issues involved. And what we found is that, and we looked at it, and what we found is that a lot of the requirements in the legislation required that the person be safe to travel, required that the person have no court holds or no warrants or all of these. It was a checklist of all of the things that the government had to basically certify before an individual could be put on a plane. There was the other factor, which was that we already have service providers who are doing this very quietly. They're doing it under the radar. And when this thing hit the media, and I found out about it because somebody from Huffington Post called me,
Whoops.
and the next call was the New York Times, and they wanted me to comment on it. The reality was that my phone then started ringing, and people said, "Where's my airline ticket? I want my ticket now." So we had already been doing this because these two guys at the far end of the table, what they do, a big reason people fall through that lauhala, and become homeless is because a substantial and important and nurturing relationship has ended. Something has gone sideways. And what they do is they try to figure out how to build that lauhala back by reestablishing that relationship. And they do this under the radar. They don't do it after an article has appeared, which is free tickets home, right? That's the reality of the situation. And sometimes we become we're like our worst enemy, because by making something so publicized, we really take away the ability of the service providers, Jerry and Jason, to be able to do the work that they do,
We actually do have, I don't know how Connie Mitchell affords it, and it doesn't happen very often, But we do sometimes find the funds to send folks that are in our shelter. It's very common for folks in a state of mental illness to, in a manic bipolar episode, to purchase a ticket and max out their credit cards. And in a month, you've got single women in particular coming to their senses in our single dorm and really wishing that they hadn't done that. And they've gotten back on we've had a chance to get them a psych eval and get diagnosis and get meds. We know nothing about them. We don't know what type of psych history they've had, so we're starting from scratch to try to see what medications might help them. And those often are the appropriate people for whom those types of funds could be dedicated. And Connie will approve that from time to time, and we do sometimes send folks back. It's not cheap, obviously, but when we know we can do that and it's going to be a return flight that will stick and it won't be an individual that we'll see back next winter, we'll consider that. So I think that part of the discussion that I didn't have is that there are folks who do come here from the mainland who are mentally ill, who really would be very appropriate people and certainly deserving of that help to get back to where they came from, where their support system is, right?
Maybe
where their lauhala mat is.
Well, I just want to speak on, it's a controversial issue. So people just love to kind of stick on, hey, are you flying people home, or you should fly people home. I think that really just we're missing the point here, that there's something really exciting going on within our community right now. It's something called Hale Omalama. It's the House of Care. It's something that as a community we've come together, the city, state, the VA, and the service provider network to look at how can we house our homeless as fast as we can. The history of kind of the breakdown of government in being able to respond in a right way happened probably in the last administration with the major economic downturn. We had to cut a lot of budgets in the state. That ended up hurting the service provider networks because the administrative staffing was not available to help and encourage innovation and moving things forward. So we've been working, at least in the state side, they've been working with a lot less staff. From a staff of 12 was cut down to a staff of 2, and hoping and praying that they can move out of crisis. But that crisis mode was continued throughout almost 6 to 8 years here now. What we're looking at now is coming out of that crisis mode and looking at things using data to say we are going to move forward in this direction, using data to be able to house those that need it the most and create efficiencies in the system to make sure that these people who we're able to house stay housed and provide the support for them. So through Hale Omalama, we are using the coordinated assessment that Colin had mentioned before, the measuring stick, the yardstick, to say, what is the need of this individual and how do I match it with the resources that we have available to us? Because in the past, we threw everything up against a wall and we hoped something stuck. You say throwing spaghetti against a wall. It really was just throw the kitchen sink. And we hope something stuck. And many times, a lot of effort and resources were put into it, and people, they fell out of the system back onto the street. What we're trying to do is to do things in a smarter way, to be more efficient, more effective, and to respond in the right manner. Resources matched with the need. And that's what Housing First is supposed to do for our chronically homeless individuals. I'm really excited to see so many people and so much interest in this room, because I know that homelessness is a very important issue for our community. It's also a very controversial issue. But it shows me that you care, and that you guys actually, I hope, that you will have and be a part of the solution.
Okay. By the way, I've seen a few hands go up with some questions. At 7 o'clock, Gene Park is going to give you the opportunity to ask those questions yourself. So please be patient, and we will get to those. June, I'm going to stick with you. Compassionate disruption, is that an oxymoron, or is that a workable plan? Mayor Caldwell's, I have the title correct, right? Compassionate, thank you, disruption. It's some folks have made fun of it, and of course there are harsher aspects of it. We can talk about those things.
So, well, when we the city looked at access to parks, this was a number of years ago. The previous administrations had closed the parks at night with no thought that if you close the parks, people would move to the sidewalk. That was not even an option in the minds of people. I don't know exactly what people were thinking, but closing the parks meant that you're going to move somewhere else, so that you'd have more access for everybody, because public spaces are made for the entire public. It then created this the situation that we're in now, where we have people sleeping in a place that is not appropriate for habitation, the sidewalk, in corners, in areas that are just not safe. So through the bills that passed in the following years, these bills were created to encourage the individuals to come off of the streets and into shelter. Also to provide public access to these spaces. That's what the compassionate disruption was supposed to do.
It also included, correct me if I'm wrong on this as well, the mayor proposed several bills to in Waikiki not have people sleeping on the sidewalks, urinating, defecating. Do I have the various proposals that were killed? The city shot those down. Although there, if I understand correctly, in Chinatown, Carl Rhodes district, there is legislation in that regard.
That's correct.
And so forth. Is that criminalizing being homeless, and is that an effective solution? And I'm not putting you on the spot, I would just ask everybody, does it work to actually put people in jail overnight or give them a ticket for doing these things for very understandable reasons? People are sleeping in storefronts and going to the bathroom outside. Nobody likes that. Jerry.
I think if you have an intelligent conversation about homelessness, you come around to the realization that not one solution obviously fits all types of homeless individuals. Not one intervention or solution is going to solve sidewalks versus parks versus cars. One of the ways that I describe homelessness is that it's something that you could recover from at the risk of pathologizing homelessness. We know that folks can be in recovery from substance abuse. We know that folks can be in recovery from mental illness. And I've more and more come to realize that people, when they're in recovery from homelessness, they're making good choices that mean that they won't be back out on the street. When you talk about recovery, you also then are thinking of the concept of relapse. So an addict who's in recovery will relapse, and that will suck. But then they'll pull it together and realize that that's not what they want, and they'll have another period of recovery, and then they'll have another relapse. And the same with mental illness, and I believe the same with homelessness. Hopefully the period of time between relapses becomes longer and longer until you're in full recovery.
Okay.
One of the things that works in recovery is when you have incentives for people to recover, and also disincentives. So for a particular group of our homeless population, I think that this disruption that you're referring to represents an appropriate form of disincentive to help to move them along that continuum of recovery closer to, frankly, having more quality of life.
Jason, you want to jump in on this one? I'm using the word criminalizing, but that's what folks like Catherine Gian and no, you can't. And Larry Geller as well. There's a bathroom right there. If you wait till 7 o'clock, we will have open questions, I promise. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, what we're seeing when the police confiscate our clients' belongings is our clients then are pushed back or are taken a couple steps backwards, meaning their IDs are taken, their birth certificates are taken, their social security cards are taken. And do you guys know how long it takes to get a birth certificate from another state? Do you know how difficult it is to get another social security card if you don't have an ID? It's nearly impossible. So what's happening is when law enforcement takes a homeless person's belongings, their life just becomes a lot more difficult than it already is. And they're already going through a lot. It's not easy being homeless. And some of the IDs and documents that our clients have, service providers like Waikiki Health, like the Caravan program, they help those individuals with obtaining those documents. So now that person has to go back to Caravan to ask them to obtain another birth certificate from Montana, which could be difficult to even get a hold of someone at the office. And who knows how long they're gonna get their new birth certificate, which means they won't be able to get their welfare or even be eligible for housing, because now all those documents that you need for housing is gone. So they're back 5-10 steps.
I really want to clear this misconception that the enforcement team goes out and looks to confiscate people's IDs. There is a process that they go through where they allow the individuals to go in and get their IDs and their medication, their basic necessities. That is the process that was created.
We're hearing from folks in the audience saying that that's not the case, and we have actually reported, Civil B, more than anecdotal evidence that IDs have been confiscated, and it's been very difficult to get that back. Would you not acknowledge at least that it is happening? I know you don't represent HPD, but...
And it's not HPD that does it.
Who does that?
It's through our enforcement team in the... no, the DFM is the
DFM stands for?
Department of Facility Maintenance.
Okay. So is it happening?
Now, if the individual is not at the site, the property will be stored. It will not be discarded and thrown away.
How do they get it back?
There's usually a tag there's always a tag that is left behind, and information where they can actually contact that.
Is there a time period by which they can get this?
That I don't know. You'll have to contact
Can I add
the
one or
attorney.
two things?
Yes, you can, Jerry.
IHS has case managers that work in the shelter. They're dedicated to folks who work in the shelter. And we also have outreach folks, just like Jason's crew. Folks who don't come to us from the sidewalk for whom their belongings have been confiscated require help and assistance and support with replacing those documents just as much as the folks who get disrupted from the sidewalk. So that's a major effort that case managers are engaging in, regardless of whether that person was on a sidewalk or not, because the chaos associated with being unsheltered homeless results in a lot of people losing their important documents,
As Jason was
whether
saying,
they were part of that sidewalk cleanup or not. There is a mechanism for people to get their belongings back, and there is unfortunately a small fee. And what we have at IHS, our outreach team actually working together with this department that June is referencing, there's a waiver. And so one of the ways that people can get the waiver so that they don't have to pay, I believe it's $15 to regain their belongings, is they come to IHS and they meet with our outreach team and they get the waiver. We furnish the waiver, and then they can go to the impound area and pick up their belongings, and there's no fee. We were really grateful that the city and county thought that that was a creative solution because, one, it made it possible for them to get their things back. Two, it made it possible for them to get their things back at no cost. And three, it created an interface between that unsheltered homeless person and our outreach team at IHS. So maybe that would be the beginning of a relationship for more and better things to come.
Okay. You know, you're experts in the field, and I can just tell you, I think we're very lucky as a community to have the four of you trying to tackle this very serious problem. Are there ideas on the mainland that we're not trying here that actually might work? We always say that we're different from the mainland and that we're a special place, but are there some things that we could be doing? I know Housing First, of course, has been proposed. Any novel idea that you can think of that you heard of elsewhere that maybe would transplant here? Jun.
It's a novel idea. Take a person off of the street and place them in permanent supportive housing. That's the idea. That's across the board what the nation, what the Department of Housing and Urban Development, USICH, everybody is saying that emergency shelter is necessary for what it is, transitional housing, but what we really need to do is take the person off of the street and place them into permanent supportive housing and encourage and support that person so that they one day can be independent.
And we call that Housing First,
That's
is that
what
right?
it's called, yes.
Okay.
So, you know,
Colin.
when I began this, I was talking about our creation of this process, and June is a partner on this process, and actually we've been on this trail since about July of last year, and it's one of those really kind of special situations we were in. We were able to basically paddle outside, right? I want you to envision a reef, right? Waves are breaking. We were able to paddle outside and catch this wave that was building and became a national initiative in April of this year. We caught that wave in October of last year. Yeah. And we brought national trainers out here. I invited them. I said, we really need your help. We got some support from people who donated hotel rooms and also figured out a way to get them airline tickets. So we were able to bring these folks out. We have now had 4 sets of training with this group. And our ability to paddle outside and catch this wave early, what ended up happening is it's now a national initiative, and 25 cities are involved. And 25 of the cities that you would expect to be involved: Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Fresno, Las Vegas, Riverside, Los Angeles, San Diego, Honolulu, Phoenix, Tucson, Denver, Houston, New Orleans, Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Atlanta, Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Detroit, and Chicago. Those are the cities that are involved in this. We're being supported by the federal government. What this is about is creating a coordinated intake system so that we could figure out what the people need. It's no more just, these are the services we have. We're going to give you this whether you need it or not. Instead, what we're really trying to do is to make life easy for all of our service providers and everyone else so that they can really start to understand who is this person in front of them. And I want to say something about Housing First. Housing First is another way of saying permanent supportive housing. Here's the idea. This is what we're doing. We want to take the sickest people who have been on the streets the longest. We want to house them first. That's what Housing First is. And why do you do that? Because the model that we have described for most people to negotiate, it's like a waterfall. And a salmon needs to swim up this waterfall. And the model that we have adopted, and we're not the only entity, we've done this across the United States. These 25 cities are all an example of what we've been doing for the last 30 years. This is the approach. Come into emergency shelter. If you're a strong enough salmon, you get into transitional shelter. If you're a strong enough salmon, you get up the waterfall, and then you qualify for permanent housing. For those salmon, those human beings are not the fittest. They will never climb that ladder. And that is why we have created this program that is called Housing First. And the way we are deciding who we are going to accept into this program is through this tool we're using, and people will get a score. And the person who has the highest score, who is the most needy, we need to put all of our resources together to get that person housed. Now, you're going to ask yourself, aren't these people who really have some serious issues? And the answer is absolutely. So what we're also creating is a much more effective way of dealing with these issues. And about a year ago, we applied for and we received a grant for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. They will be funding a pilot. That pilot will begin at the end of this month. And we will be using their services to be able to teach us how to most effectively serve the needs of those people who really, but for our involvement, will die on the street. Here's the other part of the conversation. Those people who are the sickest and who really have been on the streets the longest, they are also the most expensive. So what we're doing now, which is cycling through our ERs and our 911 system and our jails back out onto the street again, those people are costing us more than simply deciding that we're going to step up, bite the bullet, and take the resources and put those resources into taking care of them. I want to quote you a statistic. About a year ago, there was a study that was done by the Star Advertiser. And in that study, they looked at 911 use. And what they found is that 8 of the top 10 users of the 911 services were unsheltered homeless. Number 1 man used the 911 services 142 times in 1 year. At $1,000 a pop, that's $142,000. Now, we could have done much better for a lot less. That doesn't count the number of times that individual went into the ER or the number of times that individual ended up in a hospital, which all of us as taxpayers paid. So Does this sound like a business model to you? It is absolutely a business model. This is the model that we're using for those people who, but for, they will never, they are not the fittest. They will never make it up this waterfall. And what we need to do is we need to acknowledge that, because guess what? The people who are cycling through our 911 system, the people who are getting picked up for misdemeanors with great frequency, the people who are in the ERs, the people who are now in hospitals, it's the same set of people. It's the same set of people. So why don't we just understand this and step up and make the commitment? And I want to thank June and his boss, because they have stepped up and done that. The mayor of the city and county of Honolulu has fully embraced Housing First. So has the city council. They have created a program. The state has a Housing First program that we're now running. And we're running this program in tandem with the SAMHSA grant, because guess what? We're going to have to do a better job of figuring out how to help those people who really need the help.
Thank you, Colin. We've only got a couple minutes left. Yeah, a round of applause for those eloquent remarks. I do want to give the other three panelists just under a minute each, if at that, a final comment that you'd like to share. And we'll start with you, Jerry.
Your question was, is there something that's happening on the mainland that's not happening here?
Oh, you don't have to answer that question.
And I come to these things, and I always raise this point, and maybe it's not such an important point, because no one ever says, that was a really good point, but I think it's a good point, so I'm going to say it one more time. There was a social movement that occurred on the mainland that didn't occur in Hawaii, and it was driven by the fact that the mainland has winter. And on the mainland, the social movement was that people recognized that homeless people needed to get out of the elements. And so there is a level of housing, a strata of the housing market that exists in abundance across most of the mainland, that was created because landowners and property managers and entrepreneurs realized that there was this market of people that didn't have a whole lot of money to spend for housing, but if they could take a building and fix it up and make it someplace where it could be a start for somebody, or even somebody's home ongoing, depending on what people's personal standards were for where they lived. We don't have that here in Hawaii. We have Section 8,
Yes.
and we have a few clean and sober houses that are affordable. So when Colin says, where's private business? Where are the other partners who also have a stake? That's my question.
Jason.
Yes, and I do want to echo what Colin and June are saying, that Housing First is really the solution. And thanks to the mayor, the governor, city council, and we need more of our elected officials at the state capitol to really buy in and support and fund this program. And really how it's working in real time, it's amazing. And we're doing this as we speak. So how it's working is we have one agency such as Waikiki Health who will help an individual with obtaining his or her documents. Once Waikiki Health gets the documents for this person, then we will pass this individual to another agency, such as Catholic Charities, who will help that person with getting their first month's rent or security deposit. And after that's done, we'll pass this individual on to IHS, who will help this individual with finding an apartment or a house. So it's not just one agency doing all the work. It's really a coordinated effort, and really with Housing First, it's forcing all the service providers to work together, because we do have limited resources, and when we can help out each other, then in the long run, we can help out more people and house more people, and that's the ultimate goal.
Thank you, Jason. The last word to you, Jun.
I think Jason really speaks on why it's important for all of us to collaborate. It's people like to say that those guys are over there, them. But we have to realize that the homeless are our community within our neighborhoods, so that we all have to be a part of that solution. So as our service provider community is coming together and each taking a piece to say that I want to see this person succeed in housing, I think that as a community, we all have to do the same and say, how can we support this effort? In what different ways can we be a part of that solution? So I encourage you and I challenge you, everybody sitting here, how can you be a part of that solution? Because we in the government and the service provider community are trying to do this, but we really need your help.
All right. Colin Kippen, June Yang, Jerry Coffey, Jason Espero. Big round of applause, everybody, please. Reporter Nick Ruby could not be here tonight to handle this conversation. He's on the Big Island in Puna, handing out water with Colleen and Brian, and actually reporting on the Senate election tomorrow. So I filled in for Nick tonight. I'm now going to turn the mic over to Gene Park for questions from the audience. I have to go to PBS Hawaii and be on TV at 8 o'clock. So thank you all very much. Gene, you ready? Yeah. Here you go.
Good job. Thanks, guys. All right, folks. Just form an orderly queue behind Catherine over there, right over there. Right, that's good. Try to be a little bit away from the cameras if you can. We'll start with you, sir. Just a second. We have two questions from online, real quick, that we're gonna get to. Gentlemen, real quick, I have a question. It should be an easy one to answer. What about arrangements that can be made for homeless individuals' pets? I'll be very reluctant to give up my pet if I had to give it up to be in a shelter.
Well, at Next Step, we do allow service animals in our facility, and having pets, that's something that we can look into and try to figure out policy-wise how it would work with the rest of the population, because we do have about 220 people living at our shelter, so we just got to figure out the health and sanitary aspect of that if we do allow pets.
I wish that running a homeless shelter was easier. What makes it hard is the things that we cannot do. We can accommodate service animals and companion animals when that's a therapeutic pet, but the unfortunate reality of running a homeless shelter is that we simply cannot accommodate, for all of the obvious reasons, every single pet that every single person might want to have in there. And that's something I wish that I could say that we could do. But whether we like it or not, it's something that we cannot do unless that pet is a therapeutic animal or a service animal.
Okay, and we have one more question from online. Would it be possible to allow homeless to apply to be resident caretakers of city and state parks, waysides, bathrooms, rec centers, and schools, etc.? What are the legal and practical obstacles? Obviously, there'd be some funding required, but basically like an exchange of a legal place to live while providing some kind of security presence for public places.
Well, I would like to talk about a partnership that Next Step has with the state of Hawaii, and that's the Hawaii Community Development Authority. We run a job training program, and at our job training program, we hire the residents at Next Step to clean the parks at Kaka'ako and Kewalo. So these individuals are getting on-the-job work experience, and they're getting a paycheck similar to any other employee at Waikiki Health. So when they apply for a job, they can put on their resume that they are employed through Waikiki Health. And what's amazing about our program is we're paying them $10 an hour. So they're getting a pretty decent wage.
You know, I'll take that information back to the Parks Department and see if there's a way that they might have a discussion on it.
All right, well, sir, we'll start with you. Or did you want to add something? No. We'll start with you. I know this is a very emotional issue. If we can just keep it to questions so we can get through as many people as possible. I can see there's a huge line. So thanks for your cooperation, and gentlemen, please take it away.
How much time do I have? 1 minute. I built a house in Kaneohe, 3-story, 14-room for under $1,000. I've been studying homelessness since I was in 2nd grade.
Could you just step a little closer to that mic? Thank you very much.
What part did you miss?
Not much. Just keep going, brother.
I've been studying homelessness since 2nd grade. I'm now 62 years old. I've lived here for 12 years on the island. I bought a one-way ticket here so I could be with my family. And I've been living this life since 1987. And like I said, I built a house in Kaneohe, 3-story, 14 rooms for under $1,000. Some of you touched on the things that I believe can resolve the issues. They came a little later in the talk, but we talk about homelessness and we think of shelters, but homelessness is where you lose it in the heart, when you lose your family. How many of you on the board have lost their dignity? Raise your hands.
I couldn't quite hear.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Sorry,
hear
How
you.
many of you on the
How
have
many?
lost your dignity completely for over a month? Raise your hands. Until you have lost your dignity, then you don't understand homelessness. But I want to give it to you for everything that you're doing. And you touched on the basis. First, before you have the roof over your head, which is important, you need to fix the heart and the mind and the spirit and bring them back to where you have pride within yourself.
I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. I just want to make sure you have a question.
Well, I have a lifestyle, but if that doesn't work, well then, I guess, as always, time is too short.
Can I just touch on what that gentleman said? He said that he talked about the spiritual and emotional and intellectual process that people appropriately need to go through in order to move into a house and make that house a home. And I hear often what I think people have come to recognize as a politically correct way of describing homelessness is to say, well, that person's just houseless. I think a lot of people, you can put a lot of people in a house, but that won't make it a home. So I really appreciate, because of the hard work that we do at IHS to make sure that people take medication, go to a depression support group, go to a trauma support group, attend outpatient substance abuse treatment, go to anger management, participate in an outpatient program at Queens Center, because that really validates that in order for that person to have a successful home, not just a house, they need help getting those pieces in place. So I'm glad that you were able to do that, and thanks for saying that.
Yeah, what we have here, we don't have a housing crisis. We have a moral crisis. We have a crisis where we've allowed for 30 years to allow the poorest and most vulnerable people to languish in the streets, you know. And you know what we also have? We have a panel of experts that know what to do for us, but never. You know what I just heard? I've been homeless for going on 9 years now. And what I hear up here is a bunch of jabberish about the same old stuff and housing first, this and that. But I've been trying to get to folks like you to tell, and some my other friends, to tell you exactly the way we, like my friend over there, in 3 months we could be a long way solving this problem. There's all kinds of ways, and us homeless folks really know how to do it because we are very resourceful people because we live down there, yeah. So I ask you, when are you gonna listen to us? By the way, Mr. Kippen, I'm still waiting for that meeting with you. So I'm waiting. So can I have an hour with you so we can have some discourse? Thank you.
Yeah, everyone, if you can please move. Thank you. Catherine, welcome. This is Catherine Jian, former congressional candidate and powerful advocate for homeless.
Thank you. I appreciate you all being here, and I'd just like to say, as a service provider, more needs to be done. You all are doing excellent jobs in your own areas, but there's a vernacular here, and I wish Chad were still here, that degrades the houseless people and displaced families that are here in the audience. You talked about them being from the mainland and dirty, violent, mentally ill, drug addicted, and that is not descriptive of the entire population. Jerry, you said that 40% of IHS is from the mainland at any given time, and you may be correct, but it is not indicative of the entire population. In fact, 11% are newly from the mainland. So your statistic is not comprehensive. And I'd just like to dispel that myth, okay? There are a lot of myths that just came out. What you're doing with Housing First is great, but the city hasn't offered the full funding for operational costs, so it can't be fully implemented. It can't. And yet you all, except for you, Jason, thank God, you're the only person I've actually seen in Kaka'ako helping the homeless. You still support laws that criminalize, not disincentivize, criminalize those who have nothing. And you reject the fact that their IDs are taken, with the exception of you, Jason, thank you. Further, you don't talk to these people. You have participated in their dehumanization, which is wrong. And I know each and every one of you are doing good things and are good people right down when you get down to it. But politics does not supersede the will and the morality of our community. Hear from these people. Listen to them. Do not criminalize them. The City Council is going to hear all of the bills all over again on the 28th. Please do not do that. Criminalization, sit and lie, and the defecation bills do not work. They will increase the longevity of their homelessness. We have given you reports. We have given you testimony over testimony, peer-reviewed facts, studies already done in other cities of what works and what doesn't work, and categorically, hold on, categorically, they say in other cities who have already made the same mistakes that criminalizing these poor people, criminalizing poverty does not work. I didn't care if it's like one district or island-wide. It is wrong, and there's no way you can explain that. And as service providers, if you support criminalization, what does it tell the people that you're trying to help? That is why they are so angry. That is why they question your morality. That is why they think you are full of it. So give them the chance, prove them wrong. Thank you.
Anybody who wants to see happy, well-adjusted homeless folks, you're welcome to come to IHS and volunteer. We have a lot of very happy, unhoused individuals at IHS.
Hi, my name is Tracy Martin. I'm homeless.
Could you move a little bit closer to the mic so we can hear you?
I live out in Kaka'ako with my family on a sidewalk. I've been there for a year now. We've gone from being homeless to liabilities to trespassers, now criminals. What's next? Trash? You know, it's like we have a lot of families out there, and we try our best to stay as a community, you know, because we understand that we need to. You know, we need to keep our pride up to get back off the streets. These compassionate disruptions you guys do, they hurt us so much. I understand from listening to you guys don't know what goes on when these sweeps happen. Nobody wants to go buy their stuff back because it's all broken. They have to get all your stuff into a green bin. And the only way they're gonna do that is break it. Why are we gonna pay $200 to go get back tent poles that's broke, you know, whatever else, computers, laptops, all that stuff, broken. Personal items, ripped.
Sir, what is your first name?
Tracy.
Have you been to IHS? Have you been to the family shelter? Have you come
Yes,
to apply?
my wife has gone with Catherine to check it out.
Did you complete the wait list application, which can be sometimes less than a week before you're able to come into the family dorm?
I had lost my ID.
You don't need an ID in order to come to the family shelter on Ka'ahi Street and complete the form, which gives us some of the basic information that we need so we can then follow up and have a conversation with you to understand your unique situation. We've got empty beds in the IHS family dorm right now.
You got two empty beds.
So you had your turn.
So please come to the
I've been,
Ka'ahi Street shelter. Help us by completing the wait list application. and Colin or David, who are our family program coordinator and case manager.
I've discussed that with my wife on, like the many others that have left the shelter. I'm sorry, I don't want my daughter around bed bugs. I mean, I'm not.
So I run a homeless shelter. You're telling me that you don't have any place to live. I'm extending an invitation for you to come into our family dorm.
I've taken that invitation a couple weeks ago, and we checked it out already.
And what was your decision?
Like I said, it's just a big open room with beds, no privacy. You know, I've heard horror.
So it sounds like you've made a choice
Yes.
that where you're at is where you want to be.
No, it's not where I want to be.
Okay.
I believe in Mr. Yang's housing first. I know it's going to work, but the truth is, I know it's going to take years before it's happening. You know, but until then, this criminalizing homelessness is wrong. You know, safe zones. Yeah, I hear a lot about safe zones. They would work if the community in there police themselves, because you don't want people to just go to a safe zone just to stay there and hang out and do nothing, you know what I mean?
So one thing that we have in common is I wish that you weren't sleeping in Kaka'ako at night outside with your family either. So please hear my invitation. If you would like to try the family dorm at IHS, you're welcome. Come back, check it out.
Okay, I'll do that.
Could I add something?
Sure.
Next step, we also would like to invite you to check out our shelter. If you choose not to start the intake or even apply, that's your choice, and that's fine with us. But if you want to just check out our facilities and see how it's like, I'll personally give you a tour.
Okay.
And
You
another.
already owe me a paycheck. You already owe me a paycheck. Because I clean the showers and the bathrooms at Kaka'ako Park every day.
Well, thank you.
Not your
Appreciate
guys.
it. Thank you. Thank you. And if you come to our shelter, you can participate in our jobs training program, and you can get paid $10 an hour. So it's something to consider. And another service that we do provide to people living in Kaka'ako is we allow during from 9 a.m. to 11, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, people in Kaka'ako can come to our shelter to use our laundry services and our showers. So you don't have to live there to use those services. Come check us out. I'll give you a tour, and you can decide if you want to come in or not. One story I want to share. Today, someone from the airport called our caravan clinic. We sent out an outreach team to the airport because a family, mother and 2 children, just flew in today, this afternoon, from Oregon. And what we did was, even though we don't have space, we figured out and found space for this family. So this individual didn't have to complete the application and intake process. We started whatever we could, because by the time this family got to our shelter, it was about 3 o'clock, and an intake stops at around 4. So long story short, we ended up bringing in this family straight from the airport into our shelter at Next Step. You know, if we can do it for them, we can do it for you and other families. We are flexible. Things are not written in stone. And just, you know, try us out and give us a chance.
I just want to also speak on the Housing First program. For the state, the contract has already gone out, and they've already started to house people. For the city, our contract will come out this fall, and we will begin to house people this fall.
So how do you guys determine that if you're on a city sidewalk, you gotta wait for the city guys? If
It
state
has nothing
sidewalk-
to do. It has nothing to do with a sidewalk to be a part of Housing
Okay.
First. The important thing is that an outreach worker has to be able to serve, have the conversation with you to be able to do the assessment. That assessment is important because it tells what level of need that you might have.
Okay, so the families out there, because I hear you guys talking about mentally ill and drug addicted, the chronically homeless. What about the families? Do we have to take drugs to go qualify for that? Because
The
you guys
av-
forgetting about them.
The average length of stay for a family in our IHS family dorm is 6 to 8 months. 80% of the folks that leave our family dorm go into stable housing, and 6 months after leaving IHS, they continue to be in stable housing. Most of the time, it's a transitional shelter.
But you don't have enough space for all the families out there, and it's.
You're right, I don't. And 4 days ago, I had room for your family, and today, you're right, I only have 2 beds. Give it a shot, man. Try it.
Well,
Okay, sir, thank you. We want to give the other people a chance to ask a question, so if that's it, please. There's a long line behind you. Thank you so much, sir.
Aloha nui. My name is Gino D'Angelo McIntyre. I just have 2 short questions. I was under the impression that actually you do need an ID to get into IHS. Is that true?
A picture ID is not a requirement to come into IHS. If that was the case, we would be very empty right now, in particular at our men's shelter. So I'm not sure where you heard that. IHS has an open door policy for clients and for any community members, service providers, potential politicians who want to come and spend time directly in our facility and have a firsthand experience understanding our policies, understanding our procedures, and meeting with our staff. Anybody who has questions or concerns or would like to confirm something that maybe they've heard, come on down. We'd love to tell you firsthand and show you firsthand what actually occurs in a homeless shelter.
Thank you. And do you think that Bill 7 condones theft from the city? Bill 7 is what allows them to do the sweeps and to take things from people. And it was my impression that when you take things that don't belong to you, that's theft. So do you think that Bill 7 condones theft?
I can't speak to that.
You were on a Bill 7 raid. I got video of you on a midnight raid taking stuff from the home.
I didn't take anything myself.
I got video of you and
Okay, Doug, okay.
testifying for the criminalization.
All right, Doug, wait your turn, Doug. All right.
That was all.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank
Mahalo.
you. Andrea, please.
Aloha, I'm Andrea DeCosta. I just wanted to apologize for interrupting earlier. I know that you actually have a format, but my concern was the same as Catherine's. Jerry, you're outstanding. I so aloha you. I appreciate everything that IHS does and what you do for the community. But we all need to be honest about these statistics. And the reason why is because folks like Colin Kippen are going to go around town and talk to publishers and tell publishers and share with them the statistics that you're sharing. Your statistics are specific to your facility, and your facility is outstanding. I wish we had more facilities like yours. We could have a bunch of them in every community. That would be great. But the population that you're referring to was 1% of the total homeless population in terms of those homeless people from outside of Hawaii. So I just want to be clear about that. 25%, the point-in-time counts are only one snapshot, one evening, one few hours. The total number of homeless people is actually closer to about 14,000 people, okay? So over and above the 350 people that you service, and the 40% of that, which is about 1% of the total population, there still is 99% of the population that actually originated here. One of the concerns that I have is that Mr. Kippen has been using those statistics, the point-in-time statistics and your statistics to quote to publishers and suggest to publishers that 50% of the homeless population, the problem is vets. That is not true. 25% of the homeless population are Kanaka Maoli, they're Native Hawaiians. They are from here, they are born here, raised here, most of them, and they deserve a whole lot better. And the second largest population is Caucasian males. That doesn't necessarily say where they're from, but we have a lot of Caucasian males who are born and raised here in Hawaii who do find themselves homeless. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on those topics, and that's the reason why I intervened inappropriately, and I apologize to you and to everyone else today. And I want to thank you, Jerry. So the question that I have to ask, two-part question. First part question really is a follow-up to the gentleman who was speaking earlier. I know he didn't have a question, and it was really rude of you to tell him to shut up or to stop it, because that was not your place to tell him, okay? So as a follow-up to that, he asked if anyone had lost their dignity for a month. I know because I have been a military dependent and I've PCS'd so many times during my adult life that for that period of time when we're PCSing, even though we have the support of the federal government and we know we're gonna get a house, even for that 2 or 3 week period of time when I'm without a house, it drives me crazy because it makes me feel extremely insecure, and all I do is drive around looking at everybody in their homes thinking I can't wait till I have a home. So my question to the panel is, following up on this gentleman's testimony, is has anyone on this panel been homeless? Has anybody experienced a situation of being homeless for more than 24 hours? And is anyone on this panel, has anybody stayed in these family shelters for more than 24 hours and experienced it the way that the homeless people have to experience? Because I think that's the way it needs to be done. I challenge all of you, including Jean, because I think Jean would take this. A week, 1 week in the homeless shelter for every single one of you. I might add more for you, June, because I saw you on that video and you were taking things just like Doug said.
I didn't touch anything.
The bottom line is I challenge you each to this because my sense is that the answer to my question will probably be no. So I'll let you answer it if you want to answer it, but I do offer a challenge to each one of you. Spend 1 week in the shelter. Spend 1 week without your money, without your ID. You spend 1 week the same way that everybody else spends a week, and then you will see how difficult it is. So thank you very much.
Colin, would you like to say anything?
Well, you know that. So one of the things that happens when you try to get your hands around an issue that's as complicated as homelessness is that the conversation about data is absolutely crucial, because in a sense, because it's so difficult, you know, we're almost like blind men and elephants, right? You know the fable, right? A bunch of blind men touching an elephant, and they touch the leg and they think it's a tree, and they touch the side and they think it's a wall, and they touch the ear and they think it's a fan. But the reality is that you really need data. And the previous speaker was incorrect. I have never quoted those statistics because I make it a point. If I'm going to say something, I have data. And there is data. There is data. Please, ma'am, would you let me finish? So there is a report that comes out. We have a report that's done. It's called the Homeless Service Utilization Study. This is it, actually. You can get it online. And if any of you want a copy of it, you can email me. My email is this, Kippen@dhs.hawaii, spell out Hawaii.gov. And if you want a copy of it, I can also tell you where to get it. But this is a set of data here that literally looks at all of the information that we have. And unfortunately, it is difficult to get accurate information, because if you're going to be making policy decisions, you really need to know a lot about the people that you're trying to serve. And that's really what the folks up here are trying to do. There may be some disagreements about whether whether a given policy is correct, but the place that I feel most comfortable, and I think is the most rational place to be, is to collect data. I also want to hand out to you folks something that we've done. And we've been talking about Haleomalama, and I don't know how we can do this. Can you help me hand this out? Sure. Okay. And if we run out here, we got some more in here. Hang on, just make sure. I just want to make sure that's the whole set. Yeah. So what this is it's simply just a summary of some of the things that we have learned by adopting this system of a common assessment. And what you will see, and this is based upon approximately 750 surveys that we have done using this tool. And the idea here is that if you're going to be making decisions, you need accurate information. So that's the space that I'm in. It's an important place for me to be, because whatever we do, we need to be able to assess and evaluate that information so that we can figure out how to make good policy recommendations. And then we have a baseline to be able to measure what we do as we go forward, to see whether or not it's making things better. That's the objective. I also wanted to make one last comment. Again, my model is that we need to create permanent housing, and that will require us to develop the political will to do some things that has yet to crystallize. in creating that political will. And you know what? If I had to summarize what everyone here said when we did the little, 1-minute summary before the question started, it's a bumper sticker. It says, all hands on deck. That's literally what we have to do. So you're here because you care about this. There is a much deeper conversation that needs to go on. And in part, that conversation is this. What is the Hawaii you want to live in?
Well, just an answer to a response to the question. This was before I actually had a chance to move here. I grew up in the Los Angeles area, and my father, he was in seminary at the time, and he had this crazy idea of taking the whole, a bunch of young kids and having them live for the weekend in Burnside. This is right after the riots. And so it was one of the first major experiences of my life where I had a chance to work with homeless individuals and to live in an SRO, and to really understand that homeless individuals were just like you and me. And that was that stayed with me my entire life. And so I think that it has something to do with shaping me as the person that I am today. I really want to just go back to, we really need to find the political will, as Colin was saying, in all of our communities to find solutions, innovative solutions, permanent supportive housing for our individuals and our families, rapid rehousing. We need, as all the resources that are out there, your mind, your will, to change the way that we've been working at this. Our service providers have been working as hard as they can, and what we really need to do is lift everything together.
Next question. Can I please remind you all, just please ask one question. I understand that this is a very emotional issue, and then there's a lot of backstory in terms of the leading up to the question. But please keep it to one question. There's a lot of people here.
Okay. Can I just make one statement first? I think we need to clarify our terminology. Everybody's confusing affordable housing with low-income housing and transitional housing. And I think we all, especially people on the panel, need to be clear about that, okay, if we're going to lead any kind of discussion on it. When you first started, I heard you just defining affordable housing, and June, you had a very good explanation of affordable housing, but it got blurred. It got blurred a lot during the rest of the conversation. But, okay, you and I have talked about this before at neighborhood board meetings, at the Homeless in Paradise, I forget what it's called, the Houseless in Paradise play. And we've talked about the stereotypes, and I was dismayed to hear every single one of you put forward the stereotype of the chronically homeless onto the homeless in general, okay? Because, June, we've talked about this, about the statistic, the percentage of people who fit that description. And you, at the Houseless for Paradise, you said you could tell me to this minute.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you please get your question?
Yes. I would like to pose the same question to you. What is the percentage of people who fit that description that you mentioned, the drug addicted and all that, at this present time? And
can you please remind me what it was exactly that I said that causes you to think that I made a gross overgeneralization about homeless population?
Can you please not interrupt me right now?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand your question.
Yes, but can you please not interrupt me, because I'm addressing June right now? Thank you. Okay, so I'm not a very good public speaker, and I'd like to stay on point. Okay, thank you. So, I'd like to hear that the statistics again. What you quoted me both times was 75% of the people were not fitting that description, 25% were chronically homeless, and 11% of the chronically homeless fit that description. That's what I was quoted twice, okay, from you. And I have one other question for you.
Only one question, ma'am, please.
Oh, okay. But this one is very important. How many people have been placed in Housing First?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, you're directing the question to myself. So the document that is being passed around right now, if you have it, it actually shows what the assessments have been done for individuals on the street. This is the VI SPDAT, and there's a definition of what it is on the front. On the back side, it actually goes into the data that we are able to find. Those that were able to do the assessment, we've done 740 assessments as of this month. And of that, the data is showing us that in the urban region, 37% of those who've been assessed, Housing First would be the right housing intervention. That means, by definition, that the individual has been on the street for more than 1 year, or has had 4 major episodes of homelessness in 3 years, and has substance abuse or mental illness, disability. I'm not speaking about the entire homeless population. I'm speaking about the appropriate housing intervention for the chronically homeless population. The chronically homeless population, our Housing First permanent supportive housing is the right intervention that partners, that couples affordable housing, rental, and case management wraparound services. If you look at the total island-wide, so far assessed is 32%. Thank you.
Ma'am, there's no follow-up.
I'd like him to answer my question, though.
I thought that was a question.
Can I just think? You know, I recall our conversation. I recall your conversation with June. I attended that you asked this question, I think, at the play that we were at together. And I think, you know, your point is well taken, and I want to make it. I want to make it because I think you're trying to say something here that's important.
That most
there are
homeless
not.
look like you
they
and
are
me.
not just.
Yes.
You know, there is not one demographic of an individual who is homeless, right? Because there are so many reasons why people become homeless, and they are different people. But at least for what we are trying to do with Housing First, is we are trying, and what our data tells us is that we've got the average.
I'm concerned about Housing First.
Oh,
okay.
What I'm trying to say is they're not.
I'm not
all
concerned about Housing First. What I'm trying to deal with is the stereotyping that's going on. When I know from talking with a lot of homeless that if you want to know what most homeless look like, look at the person next to you, okay?
Yeah.
And then to hear our officials putting out the stereotype of homeless people being that way.
Okay, ma'am, you made your point, ma'am.
I want you to
There's someone
tell
waiting
me,
right behind you, please.
no,
please.
but he hasn't answered the question.
There's someone waiting right
He
next to you.
knows what I want.
There's someone waiting right next to you, ma'am.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm kind of sort of interrupting because I feel like, there is a big, huge conversation that's not taking place right now, but Colin kind of alluded to that, which is private industry. And I want to specifically, though, call out the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii. I'm just learning a little bit more about them. In business or whatever as a nonprofit for 163 years. They are shapers of the Hawaii economy today. And we're not looking at that enough at all. We're not looking at that at all. And they have 2 major programs, military affairs and tourism and something else, yes. But they are huge, huge players in our state of Hawaii, and they have shaped our economic system for a very, very long time. There was a time when Hawaiians were at Sand Island, and people called out before or at the Japanese real estate bubble, whatever, for mobile homes, and the state shot it down. and different types of alternative housing for people who don't, walk that whole gentrification of our state, of the economy. We're not addressing that at all. And Hawaii Chamber of Commerce is a huge player in that. And I would love to challenge you folks, if I can use that word. You're inviting the community to participate. You're inviting a different mindset. You're inviting a collaborative discussion on alternatives for this. And that's why I'm here, Colin, specifically about what kind of Hawaii do you want to live in? Yeah, that is why I'm here. I'm disgusted. I don't like it. It's like, we're in a new paradigm. I want us to be in that new paradigm. And I believe, or I want to believe, that you folks are all there too. You're saying like you are, and some of it, you're doing your part.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Do you have a question? I'm sorry.
Okay, so now we have an opportunity for Army downsizing, okay? Military Army downsizing. There is the possibility of 37,000 military personnel that can be cut. I looked on that website of the Chamber of Commerce and what those personnel, I don't know specifically, but what are the studies? What is the research and development? Why are that group getting 8.8 billion conglomerate in income that is so important to the world that we have to continue on that same trend of economic need?
Okay, can anyone answer that question? Can you reshape the question, please?
Well, it's very interesting that nobody can answer that question. And
I would like to focus on the first part of what I heard you talking about, and I just want you to know that I heard you because, on the continuum of working with the homeless population, I kind of consider myself to be kind of in the emergency room, and I get a little bit tunnel vision. And so when I was talking about my thoughts and ideas about safe zones, I'm rethinking maybe some of my vibe around that as you're standing there asking that we consider a different paradigm. So thank you for reminding me to not be closed-minded about some alternatives that might be out there for this population.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I wanted to comment on your comment. So here's what's going on. I want to just describe this to you, sort of like just with my hands and my face here. But the deal is, right, the road that we all have to walk here in Hawaii is extremely steep. Every one of us, right? Every one of us here knows that we have the highest cost of living and that our wages do not keep track, do not equal what it is you need to survive here, right? And so here it is, right? Here's the road. It's a steep road, right? And so here are what all of these people are doing and all the service providers are doing. Someone has fallen off that road. And what they're trying to do is to put this person back on that road, knowing that that road did not get any less steep. That's the reality. That's why the question that which I think precipitated your conversation here is, there's a bigger conversation, which is, what does it mean for us to be living here in Hawaii? What does that mean? It really is the essential question, because if we can't figure out how to answer that question, the likelihood is that road is going to get steeper. And then when people fall off that road, the difficulty that we will have is, how do we give them heart, right? Courage, right? Courage means to give heart. How do we give them? How do we encourage them to get back on that road and walk that road as steep as it is?
There's something called the art of allowing that I'm learning about as well. It's about diversification of humanity And the way we're moving and the way we have moved for the past 20 plus years is for everybody to move in the same direction, to climb that steep hill. Not everybody wants to climb that steep hill. Not everybody finds that very fun or attractive. It's like if you don't have a type A personality, you don't belong. You're houseless. You're homeless. That's what's happening right now. If you don't foot the bill or march to the beat of that drum, you're out. You're out because of the economic system, because of the low diversity over here, low tolerance over here. We tried to get bicycles going on. Couldn't even do that. You know how much rules and regulations there are for housing? You folks know all these federal guidelines that we can't do this, we can't do that. We forget we are Hawaii.
Okay, ma'am.
We forget
All
that
right.
Hawaiians specifically lived in grass huts, and now they're living on sidewalks. Whether they're Hawaiian, they're veterans, they just don't want to do that anymore. There's a woman, haole lady, okay? Beautiful person.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
She
we don't have time.
chose to
Ma'am?
live on the sidewalk because nursing stressed her out. She didn't want to work every day as a nurse anymore. And I mean,
Ma'am,
there's a lot of pressure in these.
We have 14 minutes left in the program,
this
and there's
world.
still plenty behind you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies out there. My name is J.C. Augustin. I'm a candidate for the Hawaii State House of Representatives, and I have a question for you guys. However, I want to give you a little background about myself. My family actually was homeless at one point. I grew up on the Big Island in Hilo, and my mom was going to school, working full-time, but she had a hard time making ends meet as a single parent, and we ended up living at Onikahakaha in Hilo on the beach for a period of time. And that experience has made me very compassionate about the homeless population, not only in Hawaii, but everywhere. And I've actually spent time in both of your shelters at IHS and Next Step, as well as working with the homeless populations under the Nimitz Viaduct and at Blaisdell Park and other areas here in Hawaii and other facilities. And I do believe that the homeless issue here in Hawaii is a solvable issue. I believe that it is going to take a comprehensive plan that's going to take not just you folks sitting here, it's going to take private individuals, it's going to take business owners, it'll take all the stakeholders involved, the service providers, as well as the state and city government. With that being said, my question for you guys is, earlier today, I think Chad brought it up when he was still here, was about development and developers, and that they don't want to get involved because there's not much money in it. I wanted to know what has been explored in regards to giving tax incentives to developers here in Hawaii.
Well, we have a great opportunity. This is going to be an interesting response, just knowing this community. But we have a great opportunity in the rail, and I really do believe in that, because we have transit-oriented development. What we have also in the city are programs already in place that have been there for a while on the books that allow for developers to get real property tax breaks for building rental affordable housing, or rental housing for those at 80% of area median income and below. If you build these type of units, you will get real property tax breaks. There are GET incentives. There are other pots of money within the state that people have access to. But what we're also looking at is, through this comprehensive housing plan strategy, we're looking at how can we create in these areas more opportunities for private developers to participate in building not only affordable workforce ownership housing, but also workforce and lower income, 80% and below, rental housing. It is it's a goal that we really want to push our entire community to be able to, our development community, to provide the supply of housing for those of the people that live here.
Thank you.
Can I add a comment? Sure. Along the lines of tax incentives, I had a conversation with my father. He's a state senator, Will Esper. He's actually here in the audience. Yesterday, we were chatting about solutions. And one idea that he brought up was providing tax credits to homeowners who are willing to rent out rooms to the homeless. And that's one solution that he is committed to introduce legislation next session. And I hope the legislature supports and passes that bill.
Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to kind of follow up on both those responses. My name is Ted.
Move a little bit closer to the mic, please. Thank you.
My name is Ted Miller. I'm an ex-urban planner. I worked in housing issues for the past 17 years. I've been a commercial multifamily broker. Thank you. Just a couple of statistics to set up my question. The states with the highest rates of homelessness are Hawaii, New York, and California. The states with the greatest affordability problems are Hawaii, New York, and California. The average rent in Honolulu today for an apartment is roughly $22,000 a year plus utilities. The per capita income is roughly $30,000 a year. Those two numbers are converging. That's a recipe for dramatic levels of homelessness. Roughly 1/3 of the affordability problem we have is due to the fact that we're on an island. The remainder is due largely to the land use, zoning, and development decisions made by the city and county of Honolulu over the past 20 to 30 years. And I could sit here and actually rattle off numerous policy changes that would make a significant difference in the private sector's ability to provide affordable housing. When I don't mean subsidized housing, I mean housing that's affordable to local people. But I'd like to know what kind of new policies you're working on right now to do that same thing. Thank you.
I have just a brief comment on that, and that is we'll be bringing that up at City Council to discuss this with our City Council members, because right now it's in draft form, and we'd like to be able to do that in the correct forum. So I'd be interested in sitting down with you to discuss this a little bit more, but I'd encourage you to wait. The news is coming very soon, very soon. Thank you.
So I wanted to also take a. I think your point is really well taken, right? The cost of housing is very high. So one of the things that happened this last legislative session, I want to thank the legislators who are here, is they changed the amount of money that goes into the rental housing trust fund from the conveyance taxes. And that is now at 50%, and that has increased the amount of money that'll go into the funds that can be used to build affordable housing. That's a step in the right direction. We need more. I want to also give you I'll let you know that there's some things that are going on. So I'm the chair of the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness, and I have a group that does affordable housing. That group has set up a working group, and what we're looking at are micro units, trying to build smaller units. And it's quite the rage, right? It's the rage in San Francisco and New York City, and also in Seattle. And so these are much smaller units that are planned in a way that the per unit cost is reduced. And of course, the construction costs here are very high for a number of reasons, and we all know that. So that's an initiative that's going forward. There's also a conversation, and I know the man is here, Don Crisimano is here, and I know Don may want to, I don't know if he's in line, but he has been working on trailers. Being able to convert mats and trailers. And there's a conversation that's now developed. And in fact, what's happened is the Honolulu Community College is now working on a proposal to see whether or not they can retrofit a trailer to be able to be used. And that's something that is ongoing now. Honolulu Community College is working on that. So we're trying to look at the kinds of housing that we might be able to build for a lesser cost to be able to build some things. Thanks.
Hi, you just talked about, converting a trailer into a home. Why not what's the city and state doing to help bring mobile homes? Wouldn't that be a solution?
At this time, mobile homes are not allowed on this island. Yeah.
Okay, why? I'm brief and to the point.
That's, you know, we are looking at all the different housing options, as in containers. We're looking at possibility of modular housing. We're also looking at ohana dwelling units and changing, you know, the rules behind them. Accessory dwelling units. We're looking at micro housing, and you know, there are things that people don't realize. The zoning minimum for the ordinance minimum for housing dwelling space is 70 square feet for an individual for a room. We're not talking about making a housing unit 70 square feet, but when we're talking about micro units, making complete units a little bit smaller and being able to provide a little bit more affordable housing or workforce housing, that's something that we're looking at. So, yes. Thank you.
I've just been informed that we can run until 8:30 for the benefit of everyone who hasn't been able to get questions asked. We will cut it off with the lady in the back right there. So she'll be. Are you the last one? Yeah. So you'll be the last person to ask a question. So go ahead, ma'am.
Hi. Okay, my question. Let me just bring you back to last week. Over the past weekend, we had a hurricane scare, right? Okay, I live in Kaka'ako with my family. I'm homeless. My husband had been waiting for a hurricane to happen for a very long time because it'll just wake up everybody who doesn't have their houses prepared for a hurricane, and about how many homeless would, you know, pour into the Kaka'ako area, or in Honolulu, in fact. So my question is, are you guys ready if a natural disaster was to hit?
That's a great question. First of all, I was in the Kaka'ako area as the emergency shelters were opening.
Yes.
And I was talking to your husband,
Yes.
hoping that he would get on to evacuation bus, because I was as concerned as you are about the families that were in the area. There were many families that decided that they did not want to leave.
Yes.
Actually, there's about 57 individuals in the area that did not leave,
Yes.
Including children. And I was very worried for their well-being.
No, I understand.
Now,
that.
so when we're talking about if an actual island-wide disaster were to happen,
Mhm.
if people, as the disaster were approaching, would take the evacuation, transportation, our evacuation shelter space could have taken them.
Yes.
Our city responded in a way that it's never had before,
Mhm.
where outreach workers, starting from Monday, started contacting and letting homeless individuals around the island know that there is impending storm, a hurricane, on its way to the island. And as they went to outreach, they encouraged them, as the news comes, we will be letting you know when the buses will be coming by.
Right.
And for areas that our outreach workers could not reach, we had our community policing team from the police department go out into these areas to let people know that there is a storm approaching. And we did everything that the city could do, partnered together with the outreach community to do so. If the storm had come and people had taken the transportation to these evacuation shelters, I believe that they would have had the shelter space to take all the individuals in.
All that is true. But what I'm trying to get at is all those stubborn individuals that didn't want to go on those, evacuation buses, why wasn't a better effort made? Because my husband had stayed back because he wanted to, persuade these individuals to go seek shelter.
In the same way that we cannot force individuals into emergency shelter or into the state hospital or into anything else, we cannot force people to get off of the areas. If you remember images of the tsunamis coming in over the past number of years and individuals going out into the water, it was on their own. And the police cannot stop an individual and force them against their will from doing so.
Right.
It is the choice. And we and the police, while I was there, they had gone into the area because I was there for 3 hours.
Yeah.
They circled the area and let everybody know, over and over and over again, letting people know, get on the bus because the bus is for free, the bus is coming by, and it'll take you to the shelter.
Mm-hmm.
There were people that took it. I watched them, I helped them get on the bus, and there were a lot of people that didn't.
Okay, so my question again was, would you guys be ready for a natural disaster if it was to hit?
Well, I can speak for Waikiki Health and Next Step Shelter. We evacuated our shelter, and how we evacuated our shelters, it ran very, very smoothly. We partnered with Robert Sawai, and they sent 4 buses to our shelter and picked up our residents. And we evacuated our shelter without officials telling us that we had to leave. We decided we'd rather take the safe route rather than be sorry.
Right.
And waiting until 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. when the storm hits and we have to evacuate. So we ended up picking up, Robert Sawai ended up bringing their buses, transporting our residents to McKinley and Kamuki High School. We informed our residents about what to put in their emergency bag so that they could be prepared for overnight. And thanks to June, we also got information about the routes for the city buses. So for those who who live in Kaka'ako, myself and a team went out to notify those individuals about the route, where to wait, what time the buses were coming. And I agree with you, some people went to the shelters, other people were stubborn, didn't want to go, and that's their right. But the shelters, we were prepared, and thanks for the help from the city and June at the mayor's office.
Thank you.
We're fortunate because the family shelter at IHS, the single women's and family dorm on Ka'ahi Street, is actually a designated Red Cross shelter. We have a generator at that shelter. We additionally have a very large generator, a men's shelter. We sheltered in place for this storm. If the plan for our men's shelter, should we need to evacuate, would be to follow the direction that would come from June's office, and that's what we were prepared to do if we had to leave our men's shelter. But our women's and family shelter is actually an identified Red Cross shelter in the event that people who needed to take shelter in that area needed someplace to go. So we're fortunate in that way.
I just wanted to answer that as well. The plan was for people to shelter in place unless you were in an area that was at jeopardy, right? Low-lying areas prone to wind. And of course, the difficulty is that if you're homeless, you're sheltering outdoors, right? So you don't have a place. But I want to tell you what ended up happening, and the way the model works is that the state coordinates with each of the counties. And so June was part of a team at the county, and literally, this thing was supposed to arrive the end of the week. We were talking, as soon as it was headed our way. And so he was coordinating with his team, coordinating with civil defense, coordinating with the buses, coordinating with the police. And really, that's the way you do it. And I thought it was well done. We don't ever want a storm to hit. But I think that in this particular case, we were ready for it, and the way that it went, I thought was very, very smooth. And the last time we had a tsunami warning, which was, a year and a half ago, we had the tsunami warning. This was much improved over that because we just realized that we all have to get together and really coordinate and work with each other, and that's what happened.
Thank you.
I have a question from Twitter real quick. Has any of the homeless data that you've all collected on the city and state side, has it ever been uploaded online to data.hawaii.gov or data.honolulu.gov? And if not, would you guys consider it? I would like that question answered too. That'd be great.
So most of our data comes through the homeless management information system. There's a lot of private information. So that data, I'm not interested in putting into that data server because we're talking about individuals' identification and a lot of things that should stay private. But for our information in statistic-wise and studies that we have, point-in-time count, homeless service utilization reports statewide, these are all are available, easily accessible. Just by doing a Google search, you can actually find them. If that information wants to be placed up on this data.org, then I think have at it.
We have some of that information up. I haven't checked it recently, but we have that information on a website, and I think it's real important. But again, this is one of the studies that June referred to, and the other is the point-in-time count.
Hi, gentlemen. I want to commend you all for being here this evening. I know this is kind of feels like you're being grilled a little bit, but I think, you know, one of the things that we've known for a long time here in Hawaii is that families have had to double up, triple up. You've got multiple generations living in households, not because they want to, but because they have to. And we've seen this, we've known this for a long time. We knew this problem was coming, okay? It wasn't like it just jumped up one day and bit us out of nowhere, okay? And the problem is that today we're being reactive to a problem that we knew was so bad now that we have no choice but to respond. You know, it isn't like, okay, one day we just woke up and said, okay, here we are, we got a big homeless problem. We knew this was going to be here. But my challenge is why weren't we doing something about this 10 years ago? Because, you know, this continuum of where we're going in terms of what we're able to earn versus what we have to pay to live here, that rule isn't changing. Okay, that statistic is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. Okay, that means we've got to make some serious and profound changes to the way we do business here in this state today, okay? And that means policies have to change. That means the ability to develop places and develop new properties that people can afford to buy or to rent need to be the priority. It needs to be priority number one. What we've got going in Kaka'ako today is a crime, okay? We're building multi-million-dollar properties for people who can't even live here. Okay? These properties aren't going to be bought by us. They're going to be bought by people in California. They're going to be bought by people in Asia. We can't afford them. Can anybody here afford them? No! Okay? So what we need to do is really go back and reassess the way HCDA makes decisions about what kind of properties are going to be developed here in Kaka'ako. The people who live in Kaka'ako want to have the way of life that they've enjoyed over the years. That's the way they want to live their lives. This does not facilitate that, okay? So we really have to go back and take a look at the way we make decisions about and the process that we're utilizing to build these structures. And to tell me that developers have to build $6 million properties in order to make a profit, no way, I'm sorry. I was an investment banker. I know what it takes, and I also know that they pad the books when they build these projects. There's a lot of profit built into them when they do their estimates. I know that for a fact, because I used to do this kind of work too. Okay, so I know. Now, I want to offer just a simple solution. I want to get your feedback on it. One of the simple problems today was people lose their IDs, their stuff gets confiscated, their meds get picked up, okay? Why can't we just have lockers? Small lockers someplace, and maybe we work with the YMCA or we work with the Waikiki Health Center and build a small structure or add on to a structure school lockers where people can keep their important stuff so those things can be in a safe place so they don't get confiscated, so they'll always have them when they need them. I don't think that would cost a lot of money. I think it's a very simple solution.
I agree with you. I agree with you. They're very popular on the mainland. Not all cities have them. They're often part of what's called a hygiene center where folks can come and not only have a place to store their things, but also have a bath and do their laundry.
And by the way, when the YMCA gets knocked down and they're going to rebuild
on Atkinson,
why don't we see if we can get those lockers and utilize those? How about that? Thank you.
I just want to respond quickly to, I recognize that your point and your question was really a policy point that you're making relative to policy. But I want to notice for anybody that might be interested that it's actually a decision that we all make as individuals about the extent to which we become at risk for homelessness. And I know that sounds weird. I want to explain that. So in a trend that I noticed in our family dorm, it's not uncommon for a family to come to IHS and to have 2 cars that they need to park on the street in front of our shelter during the course of their stay, both cars of which they're making payments. It's not uncommon for families to come into our shelter and have a couple $100 in a storage unit that they need to pay someplace. And so you began by talking about how families double up. And I think families do double up in Hawaii, and I think they double up for lots of reasons. One, it's culturally consistent. But two, a lot of what we're doing with families is relearning how to make a budget. And a lot of families double up because they love the disposable income that you get when you live together and cohabitate with family members, and it sends a message that maybe there is no money for housing.
But there's also
what we
another
find
issue
with
here.
those families is that when they reprioritize their expenses, they actually do have enough money for housing.
That's true. I would go agree with you that there's a lot of young men today that have grown up in single-parent households. They don't even know how to write a check. Okay. Now, one of the things we've really got to look at is our social system. And we've got to respect the fragility of new families. They're what we call brittle family units. We need to be doing more earlier on to promote these family units and not exploiting them like the family court does here in Hawaii. Brittle families, when they have a hard time, hey, let's lawyer up, let's beat each other up and see who wins and who loses. That game needs to go away. We need to be focusing on how we help families work out their issues and quit exploiting them.
And develop a budget.
Yes.
Well, I haven't had to write a check for about 3 years now, especially since I have electronic banking. But one thing about our housing policy on this island, a part of the reason why it's been a difficult place is because we don't have a housing department. My office is the Office of Housing. It was the Department of Housing and Community Development that was disbanded about 14, 15 years ago because of some things that happened in the city back then. With that, a central location for housing policy and direction was then placed into a bunch of different other locations throughout the different departments. We have now been able to set up in this administration, set up a team together to really comprehensively look at our island and say, how are we going to do this the right way?
I appreciate that, but we're $1 late and $1 short.
Well, we have, we're a new administration, or we're 2 years in now, but we have to do this sometime. And if you're asking us to do it tomorrow or yesterday, it's a very difficult thing to do because we're here now.
Yes.
And we're wanting to do something.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm not blaming you. I'm saying
Absolutely.
the previous administrations should have been addressing this, and now, of course, it falls to you, but this should have been addressed a long time ago.
But we have to do something now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No question. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi. Today we talked a lot about affordable housing, and we didn't really touch upon the job market very much, which I hope that next time I would love to hear more about other, lowering that steep cliff. And I think it's a big issue because one thing we never talked about is that the bottom line is we live on a very small island and there's limited space. So not everybody who wants to live on Oahu can, just because we don't have a 7x7 space for everyone. And unless we want to look like Manhattan or Tokyo, and even then we might not even have enough space. So my question to you is, if we were able to develop enough housing for all the people who are homeless today, do you think in a year's time or 2 years' time you would still, you would be jobless or you would have to change careers?
That would be a great opportunity for me to be able to change careers. I would love to be out of business. And I think everybody up here would love to be out of business for the
That would be a good problem.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be a great problem to have.
Yeah, I agree, but do you think that would ever happen?
Yes, one day. I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
We have to try.
Good evening. My name is Raymond Banda, and as I was listening to you all in the beginning of the program, I admit I was pretty impressed with the ideas that you guys had for addressing homelessness. It seemed bright and shiny and very appeasing to the eye. But then during the question and answering portion of this, it kind of got dark really quickly. And from my point of view, it seemed like what you all are trying to do, people are viewing you almost as politicians. Like you think you know what is best for everybody else back here. And the main reason for that is it appears like you and I both have the same weakness, which is effective communication. When I was at work a few weeks ago, I saw a homeless man laying down in this portion of an area that I often patrol. And I saw another gentleman come up to him, offer him a cigarette. You know, I went over there, made sure, you know, everything was good, went, got him a couple of drinks, and I just, you know, periodically checked up on them, and they were talking story for a good portion of an hour. And I guess my question is, what are you guys going to do now that you know the anger and frustration that a lot of the homeless people here, as the gentleman back there in the wheelchair said, listen to us, communicate with us, find out what we need. What are you going to do to start effectively communicating with all of the homeless people? And if what they tell you is something different than what you're currently trying to do, will you start trying to implement that? Thank you.
I think the assumption that you're making is not correct. I think that, for example, on my council, at the last meeting, that individual in the wheelchair spoke more than anyone else in my council. And I have 27 members on my council. He spoke more to the council than any of my guests, any of my speakers, any of my service providers, any of my department heads. And so, and he sends me things via the mail. He's a very intelligent guy. I listen to it. But I do think, you know, you're right. And I also include on the committees that I have, I have individuals who are homeless because they need to be a part of my committees. So when we get grants, I create committees that are staffing them because we're trying to serve them with the programs that we run. So I don't think that's an accurate assumption, but I do think it's accurate to say that people aren't happy. And I absolutely believe that that is the situation. And you know, I get it too. I mean, I understand why people aren't happy. So I wish that I could, you know, snap my fingers and get this done today.
So this So I just wanted.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Dave, thanks. Thanks, Dave. I hear you. Thank you, Dave.
Sir. Thank you.
You already did.
I did. Yeah.
You already did.
You're invited to my next meeting again, please.
Let me ask one question online and then we'll get to you finally. How do we implement long-term solutions with administrations changing all the time? That's a good point. I mean, June, you brought that up. You know, we're trying to focus on the now, but what does happen in the future when things change?
Well, we have to make sure that this is not only just not political, but it becomes a part of the foundation. Our structure has to be built up strong enough to be able to withstand with whatever season it might be. What I'm really excited about is that our administrations currently have been a part of building that foundation together with the VA under General Shinseki at the time. That VA program was able to create the SSVF programs, the rapid rehousing programs that they have. And, you know, the administrations may change, but what we need to do is make sure that what we take now gets deep into the foundation. Because we have, what we're doing with Hale Omalama is actually the first time that people are really, really getting together and having conversations and talking about this as one community. I mean, when we created, not myself, this is before my time, when Partners in Care was created, the continuum of care, that was the vision from my conversation with the people who actually started it. A wonderful woman by the name of Millie Tanabe had talked to me about how much work and effort went into creating Partners in Care, because that was the vision of getting everybody together to solve this problem. So it really, and Partners in Care is here today, but we have to make this an ingrained part of the solution.
Hi, my name is Jonah Tayafi. So I'm from the West Side, and so ever since we started, I have not heard from Nanakuli and Waianae, which I believe also has a huge population of homelessness. With that being said, I know that the focus is here because it's close to town and because there's more attention of all this tourism, you know, they don't like it. Well, this is the Hawaii that we have right now. You deal with it, this is what we have. With that being said, all I heard previously from the panel was that we're trying to build, you know, we're trying to build this and this and this. I live in Waipahu. Eva Beach and Kapolei have homes going up like it's nothing, you know? And so why are those homes not good enough for our homeless people? My question is simple. I've recently learned about this whole rental control. And my question is simple. I know that before in Hawaii, there was a law that there was a control on rents. And with that being said, it allowed, there was, so it's about rental control. I'm sorry. And so with that being said, I believe that my question is, do you think, is there a correlation between rental control with our homeless population? I mean, if the people can't afford the housing, that's the problem. I hear from the IHS and the gentleman right here that they have the trainings, you know, they're doing all of these and da-da-da-da-da, but we still don't have homes. So if we make the homes affordable, that's where the laws come in, that's where the policies come in. Is that going to change? So can anyone answer me? Is there any law going on about rental control? And if so, do you agree with it, or where do you stand? What do you think about it?
I think it's a great idea, and I would support it.
Why is it an idea? Why isn't it, this whole time it's been theories. Why isn't it, we will do this, let's go and let's make it work? Why is it a theory? Because I believe that it only got changed later on, and that's when this whole, I believe there has to be a correlation. What happened? I feel like there's people out there just making money while there's so many people. It's a moral issue. These are people, these are lives. Money cannot rule over people's lives. It's simple. What can we do? And I believe that the sister over there was talking about one of the officials wanting to pass this law through. And with all these people who have money trying to pay da-da-da-da-da, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's make it work. I mean, it's for the benefit of the whole Hawaii. Like, these are people. Let's not worry about what tourist people say, or let's not worry about trying to, you know, clean out our streets. Let's just worry about their lives. Let's make it work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any response, guys?
What was that?
New York City has rental control, does it?
Yes, they do.
They do.
Yeah, they do.
They take it serious, too.
They do take it.
So if New York City can have rental control, why can't Honolulu?
Well, my input is talk to your elected officials, pressure them, email them, call them, bother them until they're annoyed so that they get the picture that we want rent control. I think as simple as that, right?
There's two of them here. So. Okay. All right, well, I think that's about it for tonight. I want to thank our panel here. I want to thank you for your patience, and I want to thank you for your graciousness in showing up. Colin, Jun, Jason, and Jerry. I want to thank you all for showing up. I'm really happy that you brought your fire, your passion. I mean, this is pretty much what I was hoping for, really. You know, kind of, you know. One or more questions. I do want to remind you to please stop by Halakipa's desk in the back. But please say hello at least. If you can't make a suggested donation of at least $5. You know, they're a great cause. I worked with them before. I love them. They do a lot of great work for our young people. So thank you so much for stopping by. If you can, stop by civilbeat.com and have a good evening. Thank you.
Good job.